Yes, live. Welcome to all my guests, and let me start the program with Dr. Hussein Lagwar. Dr. Hussein, the good news now of restoring back Bab al-Mandeb Strait under the control of the legitimate government, the legitimate Yemeni government, supported by the Arab coalition. As a Yemeni political analyst, how do you read this victory, especially? Some analysts say it is as big as the liberation of Aden, because we all know that the Bab al-Mandeb Strait, 40 or 50% of the world trade comes through that strait directly to the Red Sea and then to the Suez Canal, to the Mediterranean, to Europe and to the West and to back to the East. So it is a great passage, water passage, very narrow, 32 kilometers between Aden and Djibouti. How do you describe such a victory as a Yemeni, first of all, and as a political analyst, second?
Well, thank you. And first of all, I have to mention here, really, it came to my mind at this moment, and I remember today we are 6 October. That's the day of the war in 1973 between Arabs and Israelis. At that day, in 1973, the Marines, the Southern Marines and the Egyptian Marines at that time closed this strait against the Israeli ships and also passage for any ships directed to Israel or coming from Israel. That's really reflect exactly or what we think the importance of this strait. It's not just a simple strait, because the nature itself gives the country the advantage that it is true that it's only around 13 kilometers, but the largest ships cannot pass in the western part, only in the eastern part, which is belonging to Aden. So these characters give the importance to the controlling of this passage, controlling of this strait to the authority of Aden. I think restoring of the controlling of Bab al-Mandeb and Mayun Iceland is a victory not only for the people of Aden or for the people of Yemen, or it is for all the Arab countries and for the Arab coalition that they have now controlling their own strait and their own passage in the in very important area in this area of communication between east and west of the world. For that reason, I think the victory is really for us is too important, and also for the coalition. They really gain again this victory for themselves and for the Arab world. From my point of view, if we look for it just for political or for as a victory in this battle with or this war with the Houthi and the ousted President Ali Abdullah Saleh, I think it is not less than the victory of liberation of Aden, which is, as you remember here back before 4 months we talked about this subject. I said here that Aden is the key of victory is laid at that time is lying in Aden, and today we saw the victory of Aden and liberation of Aden lead to liberation and controlling of Bab al-Mandeb.
Excuse me. Dr. Hussein, let me stay with you. We have technical difficulties with Kuwait and Paris. Another question now. After, let's talk about today's incident also. Even though Aden is liberated, and all the southern governorates almost are liberated, but they are not fully secured. And that's why the government and the Arab coalition should consider that they might have still sleeping cells, the Houthis and the allies to Ali Abdullah Saleh, that they might stay in Aden, stay away from the sites. But We today noticed this morning or this early morning an attack over the residence of the Khalid Bahah, the vice president and the prime minister and some of the ministers, as well as in some other strategic buildings were attacked. That gives also another indication of we should work on securing the liberated areas before we continue into liberating other areas.
Look, what happened today in Aden, first of all, it is a criminal act, whatever who is responsible for it, and I think it's part of it is a reaction to the victory and restoration of Bab al-Mandab, and also the victory of the coalition and the resistance of Marib, and the liberation of majority of Marib governorate. So shilling the Palace Hotel, where the seat of the government of Bahah and also the center of command of Emirate forces, and with the Red Crescent of Emirates. Really, it was for
a tragic incident.
A tragic incident, but this type of incident, it is not unexpected, because I think who knows what happened really after the liberation of Aden. We remember that thousands of soldiers of the Central Security Forces and the army of ousted president were in Aden. Those people have been dissimulated within the people, and they stay, and part of them are staying in the city. They are staying for what in the city? They are just changing their dress from military dress to civilian dress, and they are still in the city. And I'm one of those who have warned the government that you have to take care. A strict security measure should be taken against those people, because also we discovered on 1 month back that many soldiers have changed their ID card, and they get an ID card as if they are of Aden, while they are coming from other governorate. That's for sure. This is not for just for kind reason, or no, it's just for something they are planning to do. So today, what made me astonished really, that we hear that Al-Qaeda or Daesh have declared that the people who executed these attacks and killing of these places in Aden were from Daesh or Qaeda. Really, it came to my mind, and sometimes asking myself, where have been these people during 6 months or 8 months when Al-Houthi has occupied Aden, and nobody resisted them of this type of gang.
And the Houthis said that we are going there to fight Daesh and fight Qaeda.
Where really?
So unfortunately,
really, this is discrepancy of something really cannot be assimilated in my mind. That this act is coming from these people. The question here, the question here, was Hadi government and Bahah was in need of such attacks in order to wake up from their really softness measure, especially the Ministry of Interior doesn't take care of the security of people. They are responsible for that, and we never see any strict measure of security in order to secure people. Now they are responsible for the security of people, or they say we will leave it for the resistant will be in charge of it. But as long as the government now is in Aden, it's the government responsible for that. So I think these attacks, inshallah, will lead them to change their way of dealing with the risk, or with the security risks in the future.
Okay, let's speak of the speech or the statement of Khalid Bahah. He said, any chance, there is no chance for a new political and military adventures. And he said that after the control of the coalition forces at the Strait or Bab al-Mandab Strait. How do you read the words of Khalid Bahah? No more, or there is no chance for any adventures, political and military, for the Houthis and their allies?
Unfortunately, the army itself before or the army of or the armed forces, the whole armed forces of ousted President Ali Abdullah Saleh and then allied with the Houthi, wasn't that type of professional forces that can have a unique command or a unique directory, for example, of work. Just they are present in Bab al Mandab and in Mayun, just eating. Even they don't have they didn't have even enough forces to resist even a group of 100 of the battle of Bab al Mandab really reflects something good this time. The coordination between the Arab Coalition Command and the resistance on the ground, and that lead the victory in 5 hours. You can't imagine, for example, they controlled one of the most important straits in the world in 5 hours. That's mean what? That's mean the army itself of Al-Houthi, or the gang of Al-Houthi and militia of Ali Abdullah Saleh, had lost their spirit of fighting, has lost spirit of resisting, for example, the attacks of the resistance and also the coalition. For that reason, I think Mr. Bahah, when he said that he was sure of himself and assured of the presence of the coalition forces in the region, that will not allow in the future for any forces to control this area, never after that day.
Okay, one last statement by Khalid Bahah said this is the last message to the Houthis and their allies, because he returned back, or he was referring to they're demolishing the country, the government assets, and now it is the last chance for them to put down their weapons and to surrender. Do you think this message will get through?
Well, Mr. Bahah is not playing with ordinary people. He is playing with one of the most really clever political people in the country, Ali Abdullah Saleh. He is not easy man. He is not. He is a criminal man. He knows what he is doing. He is playing to the last game. He's shuffling the cards. He's trying to shuffle the cards. Yani at any moment, even these attacks today in Aden is type of just mixing the. So I think they will fight till it comes to their neck. When it comes to their neck, they will start negotiate, and they will accept the resolution 2216. Despite that, they are giving some signals now from Muscat, and some people say, but I'm not optimist really to see any progress at least at a near time, because they still having the support of Iran. Last or yesterday, a delegation of the what they call it Revolutionary Committee has arrived to Tehran in order to discuss the aid and military aid for them. So they are still not understanding really the situation, that they are now became alone. Even Tehran will not do anything to help them. Tehran has its problem elsewhere and otherwhere, so will not take care of these people. Yani, they are sure they are losing their battle with the Arab coalition and the resistance in the country. For that reason, I think will not accept near time any solution, but they will come to the end of the end. We are looking for this peaceful end of the war, because we are, but on condition that they accept the resolution 2216. This is the only reference we are asking to have it with them.
The viewers, I want to apologize to my guests in Kuwait, Dr. Fahad Shlemi. Okay, Dr. Fahad, let me take you now. I think the engineers told me that we are, if you hear me, sir, how do you read the control of Bab al-Mandab, or the Mandab Strait, restored now? And militarily, is that a significant sign of a huge or a complete victory in the south of Yemen? No, Dr. Fahad Shlemi.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Dear Tariq, I welcome you with your guests, Dr. Hussein and Dr. Peter. I think the restoring Strait of Bab al-Mandab is a very important course in the war to restore Sana'a and restore other governorates. From strategic view,
Yes.
I think the world will relax and cool down because the 3 million barrel a day pass through Bab al-Mandab Strait. In the piracy problem, it will be hopefully finished because there are a naval present from coalition forces. Also, the commercial or sea communication line will be open, and that will make the tension in this part of the world as a strategic choke point is reliable and easy access to pass through the merchandise and the commercials line. From a political factor, I think it will represent the supremacy and the sovereignty of Yemen over its territorial and territorial water and the coastal area. I think this will encourage and raise the morale of the Yemeni army and the coalition and the resistance fighters, which will give them the motive to fight more and to restore more lands. From the operational and military concept, I think that is an important indication, making an aggressive operations instead of being in defensive mode. And this aggressive operations will move, I think it will move from Bab al-Mandab Strait to Al-Makha port, and I think they will move to Ta'az, and that is an encouraging sign to finally go to the Battle of Sana'a. I think the message is very clear for the world that Yemen is practicing its sovereignty and supremacy over the land and over the territorial water. Why Strait of Bab al-Mandab very important? In the Middle East there are 3 strategic choke point for sea line communication and oil flow. Suez Canal, Strait of Hormuz, and Bab al-Mandab. 3 million barrel a day pass through Bab al-Mandab, and that is you see all the world will be focusing in that area until thanked to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala our soldiers restore the Strait of Bab al-Mandab, and they practice the control, and that is a very encouraging sign from operationally, politically, and economical factors.
Okay. Peter, Humi in Paris, how do you read this, this victory over Bab al-Mandab Strait, return back to the sovereign, legitimate government of Yemen?
Well, of course, I think since so much of the world's oil supply does go through those particular straits, it's obviously good news for people that rely on those and countries that rely on those oil supplies. It's nevertheless, I should add, I think at this point, that what has been going on in Yemen has largely taken a back seat in terms of West European coverage and media coverage and attention to what's been going on in Syria and the refugee crisis that we've seen develop across the whole of Europe, really, since the summer. Now, obviously, the attack on the Qaza Hotel this morning in Aden brought back, it was really a reminder to many West Europeans in terms of what is really an ongoing situation in Yemen. And the fact that despite the fact that the city has been cleared of the majority of opposition to today's government in Yemen, that it's not entirely secure yet. I think that's certainly something that's going to have to concern the authorities there. And of course, the Saudi-led coalition, as they continue their advance towards the south. There remains up in the north, of course, Sana'a, where the opposition has not been ousted yet. So this has really acted, I think, the attack on the hotel, has acted as a reminder as to the situation is far from over. Certainly, there was good news for the Yemeni authorities and the coalition when the government went back to Aden after close to 6 months, I think it was, of exile in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. But the attack this morning and the tragic deaths of 15 people, most of them, if I understand correctly, members of the coalition forces, it really does highlight the situation and the problem that continues to exist in Yemen.
Let me go back, allow me to go back to Dr. Fahad Shlaimi. Dr. Fahad, in your previous answer a while ago, said after controlling the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, the forces will continue to Makha port and then to Taiz. Ma'rib is still also under fire from both sides. The coalition wants to liberate Ma'rib. Militarily, how we should read the foreseeable future, like in a week or so, and how do you react to the action against the coalition forces and against the government, the legitimate government today, in an attack that was both of my guests have spoken about? How do you read such an attack, and how can we prevent such attacks in the future?
I think first of all, I will just correct my colleague Peter. They are traitors. They are not opposition. They tried to sit with them many times. They refused. They made a military coup against a legitimate government. Before, yes, we could say they are oppositions, as long as they used the weapons and killing innocent people, especially in Taiz and Aden and many other cities. Lastly, they made a terrorist attack against the coalition forces. Refer back to the military operations. I think the mood of the coalition has switched from defensive to the offensive. If we could see or imagine that we see the map of Yemen, I think there are many military activities. From air, the coalition has the air supremacy. They control the air, and they are giving a close air support, which they call it CAS, close air support to the land forces. I think there are many plans, but the main obstacle is that the traitors, the Houthi forces and Ali Saleh forces, are using mines. They are throwing mines in a way it's not military correct. If you want to build a minefield, it needs to be a sign on the map, and it must have a warning. They use this, and this is part of the war crimes also. That is one of the main obstacles where coalition forces are slowing down their their offensive advance. If they control Taiz, if the coalition were able to control Taiz, and mainly Ma'rib is almost done, controlling Taiz. Taiz is the key to Sana'a. I think Taiz is 147 or 174 kilometers away from Sana'a. Although Taiz has a huge population density, more people in Taiz. Taiz has a historical image for the Yemeni revolutions in the modern history of Yemen. They started the 1962 revolution. I think the coalition is persisting and insisting to advance towards Sana'a. Nobody wants more blood. There are many political calls to the traitors, Houthi and Ali Abdullah Saleh, to end this conflict and comply with resolution 2216, but the answer was no. We tested them, I mean the coalition tested them in many times to obey or to comply with any future negotiations, and they didn't make it. There are many unsuccessful attempts to restore and resolve this conflict, but I think the traitors, Houthi and Ali Abdullah Saleh, refused to do so, and now they are trying to maneuver with the political maneuvers, going to Russia or trying to making Oman to be the mediators to resolve or to recorrect their mistakes and sins. It's not acceptable anymore. Either they bound to resolution 2216, or the coalition is advancing to Sana'a, and I think the coalition should move to Sana'a. We saw war crimes, we saw crimes against humanity. I think this is not acceptable in a way that is, we give the traitors a pardon for what they do. I think we should put them on court, and the people of Yemen will judge about their faith.
Before I come back to you, Dr. Hussein, let me ask Peter. Peter, you mentioned a while ago in Paris that the media, the media coverage in the in Western Europe was not really enough in Yemen as it is in Syria. Why is that in your point of view? And what do we need in order to have a full coverage of the Yemeni misery of the Yemeni people? We have more than 21 millions in Yemen that are in need of humanitarian aid, of support, of showing, as Dr. Fahad mentioned a while ago, that we need an international support for the resolution 2216. Why, in your point of view, Western Europe is still quiet towards Yemen?
Well, I think the simple answer to that is that the Western European countries are more directly involved in what's been going on in Syria. I mean, the French are now actively and have been for several weeks now taking part in the US-led coalition attacks on Syria. They started off by attacking specific targets in northern Iraq and those sort of areas. Now they're actually pinpointing targets inside Syria itself. And so is obviously the United States, and to some extent, although to a lesser degree, Great Britain as well. And now, of course, with the Russians intervening as well to try and prop up the government of Bashar al-Assad, this has thrown a whole new dimension into this sort of very complicated situation that already exists in Syria with all the various factions. And I think if you look at what's happening in Yemen, I mentioned the various factions and forces that are taking part in a multiple conflict in Syria. In Yemen, let's not forget, one of the points that the Western media has looked at and has looked at again today is to say, well, it's not just the government and the Houthis, but there's also elements of Al-Qaeda, the AQAP, which until fairly recently the American military was targeting to some extent. They've dropped back on that particular action now. And then, of course, there's Daesh, or the IS, that seems to be developing its presence in Yemen. So you've got these, if you like, there's four different units. I won't call them factions, because one of them, of course, is the legitimate government, I suppose, of Yemen. But it's a situation that is not entirely that clear. It's a difficult campaign militarily. And as I was saying earlier, I don't think the situation is entirely settled yet, and much remains to be done in terms of actually securing areas in which the opposition has left, or has at least been pushed to other sides. And now you've got these IS and Al-Qaeda elements, and everybody's potentially, I think, is going to be fighting each other, and we've seen some of this in Syria. So it just adds to the confusion. Just to finish, if I may, one thing that has been reported in Britain, the BBC in their Panorama show did a series of specials about 3 or 4 weeks ago, and looking at what is the cost to the civilians, the innocent civilians, who always bear a huge cost in any war in any part of the world. And they had some fairly explicit pictures of some of the suffering that's going on caused by the war. And they mentioned that up to 2,300 civilians have been killed tragically in this conflict, and of course throughout conflicts throughout the Middle East. We're seeing what's developing now in Israel, in Palestine, and of course Syria. So let's not forget the civilian victims. Is the message that we're getting from some of the media in Europe.
Dr. Hussein, in a new development, the coalition forces are controlling two strategic hills, the Tal'a al-Hamra and Al-Labs, and also a surrender of a full brigade from the Houthis, a full surrender with their equipment from the from the Republican Guard, actually, with their equipment to in Al-Jufaina in the west. How do you read this surrender, full surrender by a full brigade with their equipment? Let's say the Republican Guard now is realizing they are losing on the ground and they are starting to surrender? Or how do you read the development, and how strategically are those two hills, the Tal'a al-Hamra and the Labs, militarily?
Well, concerning the war or the battles in the eastern part of Yemen, mainly in Marib, I think the Republic Guard has taken a lot of defeat in this area, and they are suffering a lot. And I think they came to reach now the end of the battle for themselves because of the heavy attacks on them by by the planes and by the tanks, and they are already surrounded by the forces, the army, and also the resistance from different areas. So they are
different directions.
Yeah, and they came, I think, to reach that this battle will not reach to anything for themselves. Just they are losing their life, and they are losing, just wounded or for nothing, for defending cause of ousted president and this al-Houthi. So they lost the spirit of fighting again. At in the other side, we saw the opposite of this position of the resistance. They are they have the spirit to fight. They have spirit to liberate more and more territory in the country. I think now defeating of al-Houthi is not, I said it before here. I said that defeating al-Houthi started from Aden, and now it is going on. Okay, we see slow downing in Marib and in Ta'az, but at the end of the day we will see a complete defeat. I have a remark or a comment on what Mr. Peter say on the Al-Qaeda, KAP and ISIS.
AKUP.
QB Al-Qaeda في العرب Peninsula and for the ISIS, Daesh. I think unfortunately people are overpassing the real leader of these groups. Even ordinary person in the country knows who are controlling this group of Al-Qaeda and ISIS in Yemen. We know all. Whereas Al-Qaeda during 6 months of Al-Houthi occupation of Aden hadn't do anything at all. We never see any operation by Al-Qaeda.
So are you referring that Al-Qaeda is controlled by Ali Abdullah Saleh?
It is controlled by Ali Abdullah Saleh and his ally and some religious fractions in the country. They are doing really, because if we look at
because he used it before.
Yes, he used it
Ali
before.
Abdullah Saleh used Al-Qaeda against the Gulf states, right?
Not only the Gulf states,
even against America.
Against American, he's playing with Al-Qaeda. He's playing to get money, to get support, to establish his regime and his family control of the country since long time. And we say that since long time. Unfortunately, people didn't reach to this conclusion only lately. So we have to emphasize that. I am sure that the defeat of Ali Abdullah Saleh and his forces in Sana'a and other where he's still present will lead to defeat of Al-Qaeda and ISIS in Yemen. This is without any question, without any hesitation. I am saying that because we know where these people came, from where they came, from who is supplying them with their arms, who's controlling them, who's give them the money, and everything is clear. You can't imagine, for example, Al-Qaeda in Hadramaut, the member of Central Security Forces have the bandroll of Al-Qaeda, and then they give their arm and they left to their house. It is something. It is a big games in the country. Really, some people are not want to, or they doesn't want, or they do not want to say it clearly, but we say it here.
Okay, Dr. Fahad, if we go back militarily, sir, the coalition have attacked in 29 attacks over the Houthis and Ali Abdullah Saleh in many areas, especially in the Taiz Governorate, in Jabal al-Nar, actually the Mount of Fire, in the also in Al-Makha and Al-Rabi'i, west of Taiz, and also some tanks were attacked and demolished in those. So since Saturday, the coalition have exceeded the number of flights over the both the Houthis and Ali Abdullah Saleh militias. How do you read the new strategy by the coalition forces over Taiz, Ma'rib and Al-Makha region? And I want to go back to my previous question to you. Controlling Al-Makha along with the Strait, Ma'rib and Taiz, does that stop the support of the Iranians by sending ships full of weapons, as was caught last Thursday by the coalition forces? A shipping or a fishing ship was full of military equipment to the Houthis. The control of the coastline, do you think that will support their cause in liberating the areas in a faster pace?
I will answer your last question as the first question. Yemen has 2,050 kilometers coastal line. This is a big distance. Now let's think about the Iranian submarines. Did we think about it? Bahr al-Arab is deep, and I think there are many gaps that the Iranian could penetrate or infiltrate between these gaps. But mostly, if we talk about the ship, I think the coalition is practicing now, as they say it in maritime language, sea control, or favorable situation in sea control. That is a positive point for the maritime coalition maritime forces. But the possibility of having infiltration operations to smuggle weapons is still stand. There are chances to do that. I think the Iranian Revolutionary Guard and the Iranian intelligence, they were in Yemen since 2004. We cannot deny that. So they know where is the weak point. But the possibility is still stand. Yes, the coalition were able to trim these kind of operations, but honestly, they cannot stop it if they use the Kilo class submarines, the Iranian Kilo subclass marine. Referring back again to your question, I think I just want to comment on Dr. Hussein. If we analyze the attack this morning, we could see two synchronized attack used in one time against two targets to serve one objective. They said there are three vehicles did a suicide attack against three targets, and at the same time there was a rocket attack, Katyusha, or missiles, I don't know, used again against the hotel where the government is there. From this we could conclude that two synchronized attack at the same time to serve one objective, which is Ali Saleh and al-Houthi objective. That is a clear proof. These two kind of attacks were directed from one authority or one person who ordered this kind of attack. And I could argue also that Al-Qaeda, they were there for years. Ali Abdullah Saleh was blackmailing United States and the Gulf by harboring Al-Qaeda in one section to blackmail United States and the Gulf of money and armament. The last point, I forgot about the question that you asked me about, the third question, about Taiz.
Yeah, how do you read the escalation of the attacks? 29 attacks in one night.
Yeah, 29 attack. Yeah,
Yes.
29 air support.
Yes.
I think that is a military indication that the air efforts went to close air support. The air efforts went to support the ground forces of the coalition to advance more. So we will see in the few days that is an advance towards main cities. Al-Qaeda definitely, and some of Daesh, ISIS, definitely they concentrate in Hadramaut. Hadramaut is almost 600 kilometers away from Sana'a. Correct me, Dr. Hussein, if I'm mistaken. And it's 600 away. So there are priorities in doing a military campaigns. Taiz, Sana'a, and before Sana'a there is Al-Jawf and Al-Bayda, which is the belt of Sana'a. Then maybe they will go to Hudaydah. I think these kind of priorities is more important than having a group concentrated away, 600 kilometers away since 1997, by the way.
Okay.
And they are not gaining a public support. They are using the people as a mercenary. They are paying money for the people. If the government were present in the future, I think Al-Qaeda will lose the support or the public support.
Okay. Peter in Paris, now, do you think the full interference by Russia and Syria should accelerate military operations in Yemen to finish this conflict? And President Francois Hollande have visited the kingdom during the last summit of the Gulf states, and he have supported the cause of the return of the legitimate government to Yemen. Politically, how does the government of France reads such, and how do you see the indications of Russian full interference by full military equipment within Syria will affect positively or negatively on the conflict in Yemen?
Well, I think the Russian interference or intervention, depending on your point of view, in Syria has caught the Western Europe and the NATO military alliance somewhat by surprise, on their back foot, as it were. I mean, President Putin did say that he was going to provide support for the regime of Bashar al-Assad, but now, in fact, he's providing a lot of support, and he seems to be, according, if we listen to what NATO had to say just this morning, some of the airstrikes that the Russian military are conducting are not just against the ISIS, IS factions, but also against the more moderate political opposition that has been fighting against the Assad regime for the best part of 4 years now. So the Russian intervention has caught the West, or the extent of the Russian intervention has caught the West somewhat by surprise. I think what happened this morning in the attack on the Kazar Hotel in Aden has brought has reminded the West and, of course, NATO and the military alliance that the situation at the other end of the Middle East, if you like, is far from resolved. The concern, I think, in the West, and this is something that Francois Hollande, I think, has expressed several times to at his various meetings with the Gulf states and leaders of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, is that the unrest that can emanate from Yemen can spread. I mean, this it seems to be like a maybe comparing it to some kind of illness or disease, I mean, the contagion of extremism is very much seen as a threat to Western Europe. We've had several incidences this year in France, as is well known, where we have this kind of extremist terrorist action that's cost many lives. And at this point, with the focus being on Syria, the Americans apparently pulling back a little bit on their action against Al-Qaeda or IS in Yemen. I think the attention needs to refocus, obviously, on what is going on in Yemen, seeing what kind of support, maybe military support, the supply of weapons to the coalition from the United States and from Britain. I think Britain has been providing a certain amount of weaponry to the kingdom. And but whether NATO has the sort of political will to handle two crises at once, I don't think they're going to get involved in Yemen, not to the extent that they're involved in Syria right now. And of course, there's the the support of Iran both in Syria to certain factions, and of course to Yemen, as our guests were, as your guests, I should say, were saying just now. Again, you've got a complete dynamic there that many Europeans find hard to comprehend, to be honest, and it's a situation that remains, I think, unstable and certainly confusing, and not a top priority right now, Yemen, in Western Europe.
The idea is clear. Dr. Hussein, the commander of the 3rd military area, General Abdul Rabb al-Shaddadi, have said that they are controlling the hell of the Egyptians, or Tabbat al-Masariya as it's called, that also the national army along with the resistance are focusing, and they are above the valley of Jufaina, and it will be cleaned as soon from the rebels in the coming few hours. That was said 2 days ago. How do you read the situation of the deteriorating situation in the militias of the Houthis and Al Abdullah Saleh, their deteriorating morals and their spirit? You've spoken about their spirit a while ago, but also the deterioration of spirit and morals. How does that affect on the defeat of the militias?
Well, when you have a cause and you believe in it, you can defend it. That's the difference between the militia of Al-Houthi and the gang of Western President Ali Abdullah Saleh, and the resistance from the other side. That's what we saw in the Battle of Aden. People are fighting for a cause, for a national cause, or for their own cause. They are fighting from their heart. They are sacrificing their life and their body for the battle. But what we saw now in Houthi, I think it is the end of their, yes. So they are coming. They are coming to the end of this war. Okay, I am not expecting that will finish within days or weeks, but they are coming now to surrender. Just it is a matter of time.
Let me take the last question too, Dr. Fahad Al-Shlemi. Dr. Fahad, what are your expectations to the foreseeable future in the few coming days with the defeats of the militias of both Ali Saleh and the Houthis? Realizing, or depending on the information that we get on the victories of the coalition forces, the Arab coalition forces in Yemen. In 1 minute, please.
In 1 minute, if you see the advancing maps and the advancing routes for the coalition, you could see a positive signs. On the other side of traitors and Houthi forces, you could see undisciplined withdrawal from their position. Al-Houthi now is not fighting a conventional war operations. No, they are fighting unconventional war operations by using asymmetric warfare, which is 2 or 3 people as a group, and they fire and they withdraw. I think this style is used when you lose the initiative. Al-Houthi and Ali Abdullah Saleh forces lost their initiatives. I think the clock is ticking and the battle of Sana'a is coming. Either they like it al-Houthi or not, but the advance is moving forward, and that is a very encouraging sign for all coalition forces.
Dr. Fadi Shlemi, the chairman of the Gulf Peace and Security Forum from Kuwait. Thank you, sir. Peter Humi, journalist from Paris. I want to thank you, sir, for adding value to the program. Last but not the least, Dr. Hussein Lagwar in the studio, a political analyst. I want to thank you, sir.